What you're seeing is the rough stage of animation, followed by the clean, colored version of these morphing creatures. These loops originally started out as transforming abstract shapes, but I decided to give them all eyeballs. It's interesting how an eye can make anything instantly alive. So, how can you animate morphing things like this? It's actually really simple. Let's demonstrate on a couple basic shapes. Say you want this circle to turn into a triangle. All you need to do is draw two main shapes. In this case, a circle and a triangle. Let's take it a step further. Instead of just going from the circle to a triangle, let's go somewhere more interesting in the middle. Let's draw a square. Now the circle morphs into a square on its journey to becoming the triangle. This middle frame is called a breakdown pose. The breakdown pose adds another layer of movement or story from point A to point B. We could make the breakdown pose a giant stretched out ellipse, or how about a tiny little square? No matter what we put in the middle, we always start out with a circle and end with a triangle. The key poses are unchanged, but what we add in the middle completely changes the feel of the animation. That's all fine and well, but notice the animation stops abruptly. If you want the motion to loop seamlessly, then you need to paste the first keyframe of the circle ahead of the final keyframe of the triangle. Now we need to animate from the triangle back into the starting circle. The same logic follows as the first half of this animation. You can add any kind of breakdown in the middle of this second half of the animation to make the motion more dynamic, or simply morph this triangle straight back into the circle. To make the animation more smooth, we need to add in-betweens. I like to use the halving method. The halving method means that you put the in-betweens in the middle of the spacing between frames. So you half the key poses and the breakdown, then half between this new in-between and the key, then half in between these frames, and repeat until the desired timing and spacing is achieved. Just remember that the more frames you add, the slower the motion will be. The frames cushioning around the key poses will give you a slow out and a slow in. You can use these steps to morph anything frame by frame. Here's a quick recap. Draw the key poses, add a breakdown in the middle, add in-betweens, ease in and out of the key poses. Here's some tips to take your morphing animation a step further. Thumbnail key poses to test out different ideas before drawing the rough animation. Sketch out the starting and ending poses next to each other to make sure it will be an interesting morph. The key poses should be very different from each other, otherwise it won't look like much of anything is morphing. Remember, contrast adds interest. Without contrast, you don't have animation. Think about opposites. Add anticipation. Adding movement in the opposite direction to where you're going will help the audience anticipate the next motion. This just helps the movement feel more snappy and readable. Add overshoot. Overshoot is where you go beyond your next key pose. So if a key ends here, you would actually go ahead of it and then ease back into the key, instead of easing straight into the key pose. And remember to ease in and out of the key shapes if you want the keys to be more readable. You can even hold the key poses for a few extra frames to make it very clear. Favor the starting and ending poses by drawing the final frames in the loop closer to the key poses. This creates a nice settling into key shapes. And here's a couple examples I found on YouTube to inspire you. Seek stuff morphs from character to character. Notice the interesting motions and action that happen between the key poses. And also note that each pose is held for a beat, so you can fully register the character. Like the video if you liked it, and be sure to watch the other animation tutorials and animated things I have on my channel. I also have a Patreon. I post animated loops you can use in your own videos and projects, as well as some behind the scenes stuff like storyboards and concept art. Special Patreon shoutouts go to these top patrons: Remy Buche, Jerry Mcclellan of supergalacticfantastic.com, Carlos Cervantes, RogueDeezy, and Simiot Eliot.